Good afternoon, folks. The real Captain Kirk here, live from Weather Trends 360 studio here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We have a ton to talk about today. Here today, we're actually going to bring in our COO and Chief Forecaster Richard Woolley to talk all sorts of cycles teaming up here together if you like cold and snow during winter. MJO, and I think he's going to utter the word polar vortex. As scary as that thought is, even scarier is the fact that we only have 4 days, 10 hours, 42 minutes, and 51 seconds left till Christmas. Yes, I'm in a little bit of panic mode, and hopefully I didn't just send you into panic mode with that outlook. Frosty's in a little bit of panic mode and being under the weather here with the outlook of pretty epic rainfall coming and record-breaking rainfall here year to date. So Frosty's a little under the weather. He's had a good run this fall. Snowfall to date has been pretty epic. Every state in the country has had snow except Florida, including Hawaii on the top of the mountain peaks. So again, a good run, and this is a sign of things to come. So hold out hope, folks. We're in the middle of an MJO cycle that's not very conducive to snow, but that's about to change here. So we'll talk about that here at the end. In fact, winter doesn't even officially start until tomorrow, so we have 1 day, 4 hours, 4 minutes, and 42 seconds until winter officially arrives. So we've got 90-plus days of winter ahead, so keep the faith, snow lovers. The good news here for most of us is that the flu season's off to a real slow start. 13 states with regional and widespread outbreaks compared to this time last year when 38 states had regional and widespread outbreaks. And in fact, by the end of late December into early January, I think every state in the country had a widespread outbreak of flu. It was pretty epic, worst in decade. So again, off to a much slower start, thank goodness. So hopefully you're healthy and enjoying the holiday season here. Rainfall has been epic. We've had 16 cities here in the east that have already shattered or broken their record rainfalls for the year to date. Wilmington tops the list, Wilmington, North Carolina, with over 100 inches of rain. That's the kind of rain we'd see in Hawaii as a kid, but don't usually see that here in the mid-Atlantic. Hurricane Florence was a big part of that, obviously, but a lot of cities here are already in the top 2 or 3, and the rainfall coming that we're going to talk about next certainly could push a few more of these cities into the record top wettest in 123 years of record keeping. Look at the national index on the left here is the U.S. as a whole. Rain index is the wettest in 30-plus years for the U.S., so off the charts. The chart on the right is actually outside our offices here in Lehigh Valley, where, again, we are the second wettest right now in 30-plus years with 63 inches. So, again, very likely we'll end up in a top 2, maybe even break the record here, Lehigh Valley. Looking at this in a map form, we can see that the U.S. as a whole is obviously very, very wet in the eastern half of the country with 50 to 100 inches of rain in those red areas and the purple spots down in North Carolina. Been way below normal, actually, in the west and the Rocky Mountains, and obviously way above normal here in the mid-Atlantic. So, again, a very wet year, to say the least, here in the U.S. Current flood watches and warnings are up for the East Coast. Take these seriously. We're on very saturated ground. Again, many of these areas are the top wettest in 100 years. Now we have frozen ground this morning. So we're going to bring in 3, 4, 5 inches of rain on top of all that. Very likely we see major river flooding, not just creeks and streams, but even some of the big rivers like the Delaware River could actually flood, exceed flood stage. So take this event seriously. If you get a flood warning, you need to know what to do and get out of Dodge, because this will be a pretty severe event here in light of how wet it's been. Looking at the radar here, we can see the big storm developing in the southeast. It's going to be a slow mover, and so just pretty much not stop rain here along the east coast. If we quantify this rainfall here, so we can see a lot of these reds are 3+ inches, and the purples are getting up in the 4 or 5 inch plus range. So a lot of areas even around our offices here are going to be in close to 4 inches. That makes this week, these last 10 days actually of December across the country, the wettest in over 30 years. After the last 2 years, December's ended on a very dry note, below normal, but not this year. Off the charts wet. For those folks looking at Christmas morning, this is the kind of the surface map we'd expect to see. Got a big storm system in the western part of the country. Big cold high pressure right over this area that's going to get so much flooding rain here again in the next few days. But cold high pressure will move in, so Christmas morning will be actually pretty cold for the northeast corridor. Everybody north of that white dotted line is going to be in the 30s for highs Christmas Day, so the northern half of the country is pretty cold. Obviously, the southern part of the country is going to be pretty, almost obviously fall-like with the 60s and 70s, so warm in the south. Overall, we'd say it's going to be quite a bit warmer than last year's epically cold, snowy Christmas Day. 7th warmest in 30 years for the U.S. overall. Driest in 5, 6th driest in 30, least snow in 2. So, again, not too bad for most of us. Looking at the kind of the year to date here, fall to date, fall has been the coldest in 18 years, third coldest in 30 years, snowiest in 13 years. Then we've started this, we're right in the middle of the warm MJO cycle phase. So right now we're in a period of the warmest in 3 years, fourth warmest in 30 years for the U.S. overall. But you can see hope there here, right toward the end of the month here. It looks like the pattern's starting to break down and shift to back to a cold pattern and a brief mild trend, and then we think the bottom's going to fall out here by about the second week of January. We do believe you will hear the term polar vortex, and Rich will explain why we might see that here. We think you're going to hear that term 3 or 4 times here this winter as we get into February. So again, no changes. Everything seems to be lining up as expected for the coldest, snowiest winter in 5 years for the U.S., especially the Great Lakes Northeast. So again, you're going to have a lot of good news here in the months ahead. So hang in there, snow lovers. With that, we're going to turn it over to Rich Woolley, our CO and Chief Forecaster, for his thoughts on these cycles.
The reason why I'm thinking it's going to turn cold here, especially getting later January, February, take a look at El Nino. El Nino out there right now is pretty weak. It's also centrally Pacific based here. Nino 4 is where the warmest temperatures are. Normally El Ninos, as you see it, warmer over here in the eastern Pacific, but this here, more central Pacific. That also coincides with what we call El Nino Mordecai. And that has a definite impact on our weather. It's also a fairly weak Nino right now. You see these values all around 1.0 or a little bit less than 1. How's the forecast for Nino look going through the rest of the winter? Pretty much just stay the same, not much stronger down there. Generally at or below 1.0. That's going to be a continuing trend right through winter. The other thing that we want to take a look at is the MJO. The MJO has been very strong this winter and has been a dominant feature in our weather. I expect that to continue. The European model and the Australian long-range models, which go out into mid to late January, are all indicating the MJO, Madden Julian oscillation, propagate from the phase 4, which is typically a fairly warm phase here in the eastern U.S., toward phases 7 and 8 as we get into later January. Both models are indicating that. Right now, we can definitely see that we are in a phase 4 going phase 5. Next week, here's precipitation anomalies. A lot of wet moisture here across in north of Australia, a little bit in Southeast Asia. That really keys in and coincides with phase 5, which is where we think we're going. As we progress through early January, we're going to head toward phase 6 and eventually phase 7. And then we head toward phase 8, 1, and back around to phase 2. And what's that mean for our temperatures as we go forward? Well, guess what? Phase 8 starts to turn cold. You see phase 5 and 6 are fairly mild. Phase 7, you start to see that warm air start to get knocked down, turning not as warm. Phase 8 starts turning quite cold. Phase 1 is cold. Phase 2 is cold in February. Phase 3 is cold. You can see right here, here's our current trend of phase 5, pretty nice match. And here's our expected long-range forecast to go through mid-January through the end of February. Quite cold here on all the Great Lakes and most of the eastern U.S. Hey, look at that, coincides with phase 8, 1, 2, and probably even 3. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it turn much colder here as we go later into January and February. Take that one, or add to that the polar vortex that's possible out there, the substratospheric warming. And you got a recipe here for some colder weather, especially as we go into the climatologically coldest part of our year. So with that all being said, I'll leave it back to Captain Kirk.
Thanks, Rich, for that explanation here. This is an animation of the polar vortex over the next couple weeks, and what you can see is that it's been pretty much centered over the pole, where you expect it, in Siberia. But as you can see, this pivoting of the polar vortex and actually the splitting here, this actually only goes through early January. But you can see it shifting from here down into here into northwest part of Canada, northeast Canada into Greenland. So again, there is a shift. This is the start of what we think will become a predominant theme of the polar vortex kind of shifting more into, for sure by mid-January and certainly through most of February, more over North America as opposed to Siberia. So hang in there, snow lovers and winter lovers. We think there's a lot of excitement in the weeks ahead. So with that, folks, have a wonderful Christmas and a happy, safe 2019. And we will be back here this time right after the first of the year. So have a great holiday.